So I need an apron, and I saw some ones that I really like on the internet, but they are $100. So instead I'm going to try and sew one myself using this really nice Marimekko canvas that I got. Here's the fabric. It's really cool. I think that the colors kind of match the RV, which is nice. So I'm going to iron this just a little bit just to get the big creases out, and then I'll iron in the crease for the center line for the pattern. I am just using this towel on our couch. I should really get one of those wool ironing pads, but for now this is what I am using. I have this really awesome Oliso mini project iron. Perfect size for an RV. It's ironed! I'm going to fold it in half. Try to get the grain line to not be totally off. Just put the center line of the pattern on the fold.
Speaking of the pattern, this was the first time I've ever drafted my own pattern. There are plenty of Smock Apron patterns out there, but I couldn't find one that looked just like the ready-to-wear apron I wanted to dupe, so I created my own pattern by looking very closely at the photos of said ready-to-wear apron and working backwards from there. I based my initial strap dimensions on the free Pearl Soho Smock Apron pattern, so I'll include a link to that pattern in the description below. Drafting the curved armscye was the trickiest part since I don't have a French curve ruler in the motorhome. I freehanded the curve, and after a lot of erasing and redrawing, I got a curve that looked pretty similar to the reference photo.
Pin it. Start pinning. I cut this pattern out. I traced the pattern, or I created the pattern using parchment paper, and I got this gridded parchment paper that's meant to show you how far away your cookies are from each other when they're baking, but it also is great for this purpose. Pattern is on there, which is awesome. Now I need to measure, like I said, this is just for the arm, so the arm and the neck. So it's not the full length, so I need to put the full length on there. The full length is 36 inches. Okay, that's roughly 36, so we'll mark it. All right, I think we're ready to cut this. So here's the body piece cut out. Yeah, probably when I do finalize this, I'm going to want to make it a little bit shorter because it's like currently at my knees. But we'll see.
I'm going to make the straps now. Each strap piece is 50 by 8.5, and I need 2 of them.
All right, nope. Cannot leave threads around with Cat. Okay, and now we've got the straps. More or less on grain. So the first step is to make the straps. Open it up, and I'm going to fold it in like almost to the edge, but not completely. The idea is you get a really nice sturdy strap without having to add any interfacing or anything like that. All right, there you go. So now we're going to top stitch it on the 2 edges, just do an edge stitch, but I am going to add some decorative top stitching too to make it more like the example I found on the internet. All right, so I'm gonna start edge stitching this. I have my little edge stitch foot. You don't need it, but it certainly makes it easier. I'm gonna start edge stitching on the folded portion, and then that way when I do the exterior portion, if this pushes it out a little bit, it won't create a ripple. Looks pretty good, pretty flat. So I'm gonna do a additional top stitch every 1/4 inch, and I put on my 1/4 inch foot that usually I use for quilting, but it's perfect for this purpose. Okay, let's see how that came out. Yeah, it looks good. It's pretty much what I wanted, so great. I'm just gonna do that like 6 more times. I just want to mention that as I'm sewing this top stitching, I'm alternating sides so that I can try to minimize the amount of rippling that occurs when you sew just in one direction. Then you might end up with a significant bubble here. As it stands, I mean, I think it's small enough that you don't have to worry about it too much, but that is just one tip. So I did not like the thin striping. I did like a 1/4 inch stripe top stitch, and it didn't look good. So I redid it, and I did it using the 1/2 inch. I think it looks a lot better. You can a little more forgiving when it's not perfectly straight. And I did mark it with a pencil. Don't use a marker for top stitching like this. It's way too thick. The line, will vary by as much as 1/8 of an inch, and then your top stitching will look like mine did. So use a pencil. For the hem on this Armscyes, I am going to use this just bias tape. I bought it at the store. I could make it out of this fabric, but it is way easier to just use this, so that is what I'm going to do. So here I have the bias tape. All right. And you see I'm leaving maybe like 1 inch past the edge here. You don't need to do this, but I just don't want to have to measure precisely right now. And let's just kind of match it up along the edge. There we go, another inch overhang, and I will cut that. And then I'm just gonna cut a second piece of the same length. So I have 1 inch double bias tape here, and I really don't need that. It was just what I have, and we don't have a ton of options when we're out boondocking. So I'm gonna press this open and then press in the seams I want and probably trim it. Okay, so now they're open, and we can take these back and I will pin them to the Armscyes. So we've got our main body here. I've got our straps, and I've got the pressed out bias tape. I'm going to place the strap, the side that I want that faces outwards, I'm going to place it right sides together with the body of the apron. And I want to place it 1 inch in, because we're going to do a hem on the side of the apron that's a double folded 1/2 inch seam. So I want to put it in 1 inch. So I'm going to just take my pencil and mark the inch seam there, and that's where I'm going to put the edge of the strap. And then take my pin and pin the strap there. Then I'm going to do that on the other side, and I'm going to baste stitch that down just because I don't want to have to deal with a pin there while I'm sewing the bias binding on. I am going to go ahead and pin this on. I'm actually going to leave a little bit of extra just to trim. There should be plenty. Yep, and just as you're pinning, if you've worked with bias tape before, you know you just kind of want to match the edge and stretch it a little bit. All right, I think we're good and we're ready to bring it to the sewing machine. Okay, so I am going to sew the bias tape onto the Armscyes, and I'm doing a 1/2 inch. Honestly, the pinning isn't strictly necessary because you should kind of just be like massaging it as you're sewing it. All right, we're done. Let's see how that looks. All right, so there you go. It's all stitched along the edge there. It matched up pretty nicely. I went ahead and I used my scissors to trim the seam to about 1/4 of an inch, maybe kind of a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch. Now I wanted to fold over 1/2 an inch and then have like a little bit folded under, so maybe technically I guess I could measure 1 inch, but I think I'll probably measure 3/4 of an inch, maybe a little bit more. I'm going to press it all in one go. So I'm going to press it down like this, and then I'm also going to pull up the edge here of the bias tape about just until this is about 1/2 an inch. So I'm folding it under. And then I'm just going to press all along here with my iron. Just try to keep it at a relatively even distance, but it doesn't really matter because no one should see this interior part. And I don't really want to pin, so I'm just going to use these clips. So I'll clip one right here to the edge. And I'm also, as I'm pressing, I'm trying to like roll this edge a little bit inwards so that the you can see a little bit of like the orange line here of the front of the apron. And that way when I stitch it, hopefully you won't be able to see the bias from the front. Okay, done. So I've got my edge stitch foot back on here, and I'm going to stitch down the edge of this bias tape. I'm going to take this slow because it's curved and a little bit stretchy. I've decided I'm going to do a edge stitch on this side as well, and then if I want to do an additional decorative top stitch in the center, like a third one to make it look a little bit more, you know, industrial, I'll do it after everything is sewn because then I can match the top stitching on everything. But yeah, for now I'm just going to do another edge stitch on the other side. Yeah, it looks good. Ready to move on to the next step. All right, so now I'm gonna hem the sides. I just want the strap to start exactly at the edge, so I'm just gonna press it in until it hits the edge of the strap, and that will look pretty good. Clip that guy in place. And then from here on out, I'm kind of just gonna eyeball it as I press it in. And it matches up pretty straight at the bottom, so I think we did a decent job of keeping it straight. Yeah, pretty good. So back at the top here, now that we have this line where we're gonna have the edge of the apron be, I'm gonna remove a couple of these clips because I'm going to fold this back, or a few of them, and fold the edge in to the center here, like that. That should give us about a 1/2 inch. Yep, just about 1/2 inch. All right, so now I am just going to do an edge stitch along here, along both of these edges. I'll start with this one, then I'll do the other one, and that'll be the side seam. There you have it. I'm going to press this one more time and then top stitch the other side. It looks pretty good, I think. That is the side seam. And I'll just do it on the other side now, exact same thing. Now that I've got the side seams sewn, and I have the straps sewn to the back of the apron. I want to see how long I need them to be for the front of the apron. So I have sort of pinned them or clipped them up on the top here, and you can see that they are way, way, way too long. You know, we want the apron to sort of hold up like this, so that's a ton of excess slack here in the back of the apron. So I am just going to sort of adjust these, pull them down evenly, of course, and see where I want them to ultimately be sewn onto the top of the apron. Okay, so I've gotten the straps where I think they're pretty good. I ended up having to take about 2 feet off of each strap. This looks good, I think. You know, it still gives me a pretty good range of movement. All right, so I'm going to trim the straps, and now we're going to sew the straps and the top hem facing to the body of the apron. Last big step. Maybe I'll save these. You never know when you're going to need some weird straps. I'm going to cut out the facing for the top neckline. I'm sort of winging it here, so let's just measure how wide the completed top neckline is. And it is 11 3/4 wide. So I'm going to cut a neck facing that's 11 3/4 plus a 1/2 inch seam allowance on each side, and then also it's going to be a 2-inch facing with a 1/2 inch seam allowance on the top. So we're making it a 3-inch, so we can get half-inch seams on both sides. The width of the neckline is 11 3/4. I want to add 1 inch on each side so I can have a 1/2 inch double folded hem. So 11 3/4 plus 2 inches, that's 13 3/4. Just trim that. All right, we have our neck facing here. Okay, so we want to fold this edge in 1/2 inch twice and press that down. Now I want to compare it with the neckline here, because the key thing is just that we want these to be the exact same width. That looks pretty darn good. All right, now I'm just going to edge stitch down the side hems of the top facing. Got my apron. I've got my stitched top facing, and now I'm going to sandwich the straps in between them and making sure that they are not twisted, and making sure that they are going to the opposite corner of the apron. So it's not twisted, it's going to the opposite corner of the apron. And then I'm going to line it up with the top edge here, and I'm going to put it in about 1/16 of an inch further away from the edge, just because I don't want it to sort of show through on the side of the apron. Just like that. Put the facing on top, and then I'm going to pin it both on the side, or not pin it, clip it on the side here. Also the top. Okay, now I'm going to do that for the opposite. Okay, same exact deal. About 1/16 of an inch from the edge. The facing on top, make sure it's all nice and lined up. Then I'm going to clip it, put a clip here in the center too. So my machine is not going to like this because it doesn't have a very powerful engine. So if you have a heavy duty machine, I would recommend that. All right, see how that turned out. Looks great. All right, so we've got the facing sewed on with the straps in there. I've decided I'm not going to trim this in here. I don't think it needs it. I think that it will look a little bit more bulky here actually if I trim it. So I'm going to leave it. Start first by just pressing. Okay, now I'm going to fold up just about 1/2 inch. Okay, so for this, we will have to pin it, but we can at least clip the sides to make things a little easier. Take a look at the front. I just, I'm trying to make it so that the facing isn't terribly visible from the front. Not too bad. You know what I may do? I may go ahead and actually clip sort of the corner here so that it doesn't poke out. So let me grab my scissor. Make sure, obviously, making sure to not clip the seam. All right, now I'm just going to grab some pins and pin the top facing. I'll just top stitch all around it, and I'm going to try to keep the top stitching on the sides. I'm going to try to match it up with this edge here. Give it a slightly cleaner look so that it's not obvious there's so much excess stitching, even though there is a bit of excess stitching. And I'm just trying, even though I have this edge stitching foot, which makes it way easier, I'm just trying to really get the get this like line to match up with the previous line of stitching. I used a 90-14 on this, and probably if I was going to do it again, just by the fact that the fabric itself is not that thick, I would still probably use like a 100-16. Moment of truth. Oh, that looks pretty good. I think that looks pretty darn good. As far as the bottom hem goes, it's just a bit too long for me. I want a little more freedom of movement. So I'm thinking that I'll probably bring it up. That's probably like 5 inches to like, a few inches above my knee. So let's do that. Okay, so I've decided I do want to cut off 5 inches from the bottom, or I have it want to be 5 inches shorter than what it currently is. So I'm going to, since I want to do a 1-inch double hem, I'm going to cut off 3 inches of the bottom here. And yes, I know I'm cutting the wrong way. I got lazy. Let's put together the final hem. Okay, so now I'm just gonna press it up twice, 1 inch, roughly. I'll maybe do it sort of like a shy, scant 1 inch for the first press. Okay, and now I'm just gonna fold it in 1 inch. This one I'll try to be a little bit more precise about. So now I'm just going to do the same thing, top stitch it here, top stitch it there. Okay, here we go with the bottom hem. Okay, let's edge stitch this other part of the hem. All right. And that completes the bottom hem. Like I said, I may do some like decorative top stitching here, or I may not. This actually looks pretty nice, clean, so we'll see. So I'm gonna cut the pockets now, and I'm gonna use my square ruler and just make this as large as possible. So I have my 2 pocket pieces, and what I'm going to do is use this really cool foot I have. It's like a faux serger foot, so you just use a zigzag stitch, and it will sort of put it over the edge of the fabric, so it's not as great as a serger. I do have a serger, but I didn't bring it with me in the RV for obvious reasons, and this does a pretty darn good job. So I'm just going to do this to all of the edges. You can see how it really kind of binds the edge, very similar to how a serger does. So I'm just going to do this on the other pocket so that they both have these bound edges before I turn them into pockets. The way I'm going to construct these pockets is by just top stitching the tops of the pockets, and then the rest I'm going to stitch directly onto the front of the apron. But I want to start by pressing in the two sides. So the side seams are all going to be 1/2 inch, and the bottom seam is going to be 1/2 inch as well, and then the top hem is going to be a 1-inch hem. And then I'll do the other side. And pin. Okay, just check that those are relatively straight. That looks pretty good. Okay, so this is the top of my pocket. I'm going to press it down 1 inch. There you go. Let's do the bottom. Just 1/2 inch. There you have it. There's the pocket. Do the other one. Okay, perfect. Now we have our 2 pockets. And I'm going to go ahead and sew the top seam on each pocket, but not the side or the bottom seams. Okay, more top stitching. While we're at it, let's edge stitch this other edge down. There you go. So the top has been stitched, and then we're just going to take it as it is and pin it to the actual the front of the apron as we want it, and then sew down these edges. So I put the pockets together, I put them on top of the apron. I just decided they were a little bit too small. They were just a touch smaller than what the online example I'm trying to base this off of is. So it's about, this is like about an 8 by 7.5. I also would like it to be a full square. So I think that if I try to go for a 9 by 9 square inch pocket, that will be a good size. So I am going to cut the pockets out again, do the exact same process that I did with these. It'll be exactly the same as what I showed before. The only difference is that, you know, it will be bigger and square. So I have finished stitching the tops of the larger pockets. I like the size. I think it looks really good. Now it's just time for me to measure out how I want to put them on the front of the apron. Okay, I think that looks pretty good here, and they're all roughly even. So I'm going to pin these to the body and then try it on and make sure that I like it before moving on to actually sewing them on. Normally I'm not really that finicky with pinning, but this is it'll be pretty apparent if you did a bum job at measuring after you've sewn the pockets on. And I really don't want to have to sew the pockets on more than once, so I'm going to try that on. Okay, I've finally gotten the pockets to where I kind of like them. I want, you know, my hands to be able to fully go in the pockets when my arms are straight down. And these are, they're not totally like directly in front of my body, but they're not completely to the sides either. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch these onto the top of the apron. Okay, so I have the top of the apron, my pocket. I'm going to use the edge stitch foot again, and I'm just going to edge stitch all around the 3 sides of the pocket. Obviously, I do not want to edge stitch close the top of the pocket. you go. It looks pretty good. It's a pocket. It's on there. So next, I'm going to do the other pocket first just to get both pockets secured. And then I do want to do additional top stitching to secure down the seam allowance that's inside the pocket. And that will be a little tricky because we can't use the edge stitch foot because the seam allowance is totally encased in the pocket. But we can figure it out. We can use a 1/4 inch foot and we'll get a decent enough top stitch. All right, but now I'm going to do the second pocket and then we'll have our 2 pockets. The second pocket is on. So I have this 1/4 inch foot that also has a additional, this is maybe about 3/8 of an inch. So pretty close to what we get on the edge stitch foot with a 1/2 inch seam. So that's what I'm going to use. And I'm going to line up the edge of the foot here with the stitch line that I used to stitch the pocket onto the top of the apron. That's just how I'm doing it. I think it'll give it a clean enough look. We're just going to go ahead and top stitch. Yeah, it looks good. You never know till you try. And then pull out a bunch of top stitching. Looks pretty good. Decent top stitching that we got there. So I'm just going to do the same thing on the other pocket. Okay, so we're pretty much done. You could be completely done at this point. I will say that the example online that I was trying to sort of recreate has more top stitching. So it would have top stitching, another layer, another row of top stitching here, all along the edges, the bottom, the top. I could do that, but honestly, I kind of like the way it looks now, and I'm not really feeling like doing a ton more top stitching, so I'm not going to. So I don't have any webbing, and we're kind of in the middle of nowhere right now, and so I couldn't find any webbing. And I do have plenty of this bias tape that I used to bind the Armscyes, so I'm going to go ahead and see how this looks if I just take this and sew it right here and create a little towel loop for myself. I think that's cute. I think it's kind of gives it a nice contrast with the rest of the fabric. Of course, if it's ugly, then I'll just remove it. But yeah, let's give that a try. I think that I like the idea of having a towel loop on an apron. I've never had that before. Just measure the length that I need and then maybe 2 inches more and just cut that. And I'm going to put the part of the bias tape that has the open edge, put that on the bottom and kind of make sure you can't see it because I kind of want it to look as if it were webbing. So I have my little piece of tape here. I'm going to press in one of the edges, about a 1/2 inch. It really doesn't matter. And then I will just iron that down. I'm going to clip these edges so that they don't peek out. All right, now I'm going to take it over to the apron and I'm going to see how much I need to press in the other side, and then I'll do that. And then we'll be ready to sew this directly onto the top of the apron just like we did with the pockets. Okay, so I have pressed in both the edges of the bias tape, and now I'm just going to pin it to the top of the apron and I'm going to sew it on, just tack it on. All right, so I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and I'm going to stitch right here. And then I'm going to stitch here, and that should sort of lock it in place. So to stitch this on, I'm kind of just eyeballing it. I'm not using an edge stitch foot. I just want to create a rectangle essentially, mimicking the top stitching that's here to attach the pocket to the apron. All right, let's see how that turned out. Not perfect, but pretty good. That's pretty much what I wanted. I just wanted a rectangle to secure this and to secure the interior part of the seam allowance in there. So now I'm just going to do it on the other side, on the edge of the apron, and we'll have our loop. And here it is, the completed apron with the little towel loop and pockets, crossback straps, nice and comfy for lots of cooking. No pressure on your neck or anything. I think it turned out pretty well, considering that I sort of self-drafted this on the fly and just tried to use online examples and photos. I'm pretty happy with it, and it seems pretty comfortable. It gives me a lot of movement and good coverage too. So yeah, that's pretty much it.